Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Games get 10 times better when Michelob Ultra is on the line, so race to the bottom of a slope. Winner gets an Ultra. Or enter at michelobultra.com/ultra instructor for a chance to win tickets to the hottest sporting events of 2026. Michelob Ultra, Ultra Instructor, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 plus. Begins on January 30th, 2026. Ends on February 22nd, 2026. See official rules at michelobultra.com/rules for free entry deadlines, prizes, and details.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Hey, everybody. It's Weird Islanders, the podcast, back once again. My name is Dan. That is Mike. How are you this evening, Mike?
I'm doing really well. We just had some hot cricket talk in the green room. So I'm obviously in a great mood here. Happy to talk about a season and an era of hockey that's pretty near and dear to both of our hearts and a lot of Islander fans' hearts. And a player who kind of just played a pretty pivotal role in this crazy season, very uplifting season, and then just disappeared from the island. So we'll get to the bottom of all that with a great guest. I'm really excited to do it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is an era that we talk about a lot, but not a player that we talk about a lot, who seems to, in a weird way, have been kind of very important to a couple of separate franchises, and yet nobody talks about him, and he was not in the NHL for very long. And for one team, he's one of the best players they've had in a very, very strange transitional era as well. To talk about that, we have a great guest. He's a writer and a host of the great podcast, The Thrill of Defeat, Dan Hopper. Dan, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. I'm very, very excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
I can't wait to talk to you about this because in a very short period of time, I have become incredibly obsessed with your podcast. It is absolutely amazing. It is right up my alley, as I was telling you before. I don't want to explain. I want you to explain the concept behind Thrill of Defeat.
So Thrill of Defeat, it's a podcast about the shared pain of sports fandom. And every episode I have writers and comedians who I like personally, who root for a specific sports team, come on and talk about that team and kind of the ups and downs, the heartbreak they've suffered, why they're still fans. And, you go through some of the worst moments in that team's history, and everyone has a good laugh and, relives the stupid pain we've all experienced.
It is 100%, like I said, up my alley. And I'm telling you right now, you being the person listening to this, if you like what Mike and I do here on Weird Islanders, a podcast, and on Islanders Anxiety and our Patreon, this show is 100% for you, because it is people just like us talking about their, like Dan said, their shared pain, these traumatic moments that have stuck with us for years and years as fans. And what I love is that, yeah, you got a lot of the usual suspects in there. There's a Leafs episode that's absolutely fantastic, a Canucks episode that's absolutely fantastic. There's a Knicks one, a Mets one. They're all great. But you also talk to fans of teams like the New England Patriots, who you would think, the Patriots won 100 Super Bowls or whatever. How is there any trauma there? But believe it or not, there were Patriots fans before 2001. And they went through a lot of shit. And then all of a sudden, overnight, everybody hates them. They went from a team that nobody paid attention to that everybody hates. Was there a thing that you found sort of surprising in bringing somebody in to talk about a team that maybe you didn't think had this sort of trauma that, a lot of these kind of, for lack of a better word, loser franchises have definitely had?
Well, I feel like the Knicks episode that you mentioned, I kind of underrated how bad the Knicks have been in my lifetime. Like, I don't think of them as a loser franchise, but and last year they're in the playoffs and going on a run. And I was preparing for the episode. I'm like, oh, that's the first year they've been good in like 25 years. Like,
the Knicks haven't won a championship. The Knicks haven't won a championship since the Islanders were founded, which is like 50 something years ago. It's crazy.
Yeah, and they have the semi 90s glory period, but it was
Right.
really like Patrick Ewing already a little on the older side,
Right.
already injured, and then going up against Michael Jordan like every year, and it's just
Right.
like they never really had their own glory period. But you don't think of them. I mean, maybe New Yorkers listening to this do, but if you're naming like loser franchises, you get pretty far down the list before someone says the Knicks, but they're
Oh, yeah,
kind of
for sure.
sneaky in there.
Yeah, they might. I feel like the Knicks' loserness in this market gets overshadowed by the Jets, like just being the
Yeah,
absolute,
for sure.
the dreariest of the dreary. And then with for me and for a lot of my friends who are Islander fans, it's the Knicks. The Knicks at least were stable, right? They're worth billions of dollars.
Right.
They play in Madison Square Garden. They're always going to be there. So you kind of figure, yeah, eventually they'll get there. And they're still the Knicks. Like, Spike Lee's still there, and the whatever the cast of whatever show is hot at the time is going to be courtside, and whoever's so like there's that, and so there's still
911 New Orleans. Or
Yeah.
something.
yeah exactly.
I don't know what network shows are
Yeah,
on now.
exactly. I'm just thinking of those early 2000s Knicks where they'd be like, "Yep, the cast of Lost is here," and like they'd wave in their baggy clothes. But I think because the Knicks have some serious glitz to them, like a team like the Islanders, who we never knew if they were going to be there next season, also like overshadow them here. And so it's like, it's weird. It's like almost like the Knicks never have a record. They're just like an exhibition team. They're just a thing to do in New York City. So it almost feels like the wins and losses, except to their diehards, of which of course there are plenty of them. They just didn't matter. It's like going to see the Rockefeller Christmas tree or something. It's just something that happens in New York City on a nightly basis.
Just going to see the tree and getting really pissed off. It's like, come on!
Yeah.
It's like,
Like,
four of the Rockettes are hurt tonight.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, right?
Jesus Christ!
How much are these
$20
branches cost?
for a
What?
beer? Yeah, I paid $20 for a beer at the tree, and Ben Stiller was there.
It's fine. But you specifically are a Pittsburgh guy.
Yes.
And you said on one of the episodes that I listened to that hockey's your favorite sport, which obviously means the Penguins. I'm going to do to you what you do to your guests on the show, which is ask you, what's your history with the Penguins? How far back do you go with them? And how'd you first get started watching them?
I was born in the early 80s, and my dad, for whatever reason, he never played hockey. I don't think he's even skated before in his life. Was just an immediate huge hockey fan. He had Penguin season tickets from their inception in the early late 60s, early 70s. They were $5. It was a couple thousand fans a game. They were
I was
terrible.
going to say, it was part of a very rare club, I would think, at that point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they just like a lot of those teams back then, they just would like fight. And it was like kind of funny when they would fight, and then they would win they'd make the playoffs because 99% of the league made the playoffs,
Sure.
but they were never going to beat Montreal and Boston and stuff. But yeah, so I grew up going to games since I was 1 and 2. He would sneak me in on his shoulders and stuff, and got really, really into hockey. And the Penguins were terrible in the 80s, but they had Lemieux, so it was always kind of a little fun. But they would lose a lot. But I was a little kid; I didn't really know. And then early 90s, they started getting really, really good. I was like more cognizant of sports then. I started playing hockey myself. And so it really was just like a perfect storm of like, you have this team that's good and fun. And I've been going to the games my whole life, and it's like a sport that I'm playing. And it's just like, well, I'm kind of, set for life there.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, it's nice when you can go from very, very little to watching them and get better and better and better, especially when you're cognizant, like you said, and you're more into it, you can kind of really appreciate it. Do you have a favorite Penguin that is not one of the usual suspects, i.e. Lemieux, Yager, Crosby, Malkin, these types of guys? Is there some
we've been
Penguin?
Pretty spoiled with just, like not just good players, just like literal all-time great into another all-time great into 2 more all-time greats, like covering most of my life, and I'm in my early 40s. Like, it's crazy. Man, I was a big Alexei Kovalev fan. I don't know if I feel like he just like guys at the NHL level that can dangle defensemen. You just don't see that very often. I mean, he can just stick handle around people, and that I just love that. But he was good at everything. He had a really good shot. He was like physical, but they kind of got him with little fanfare from the Rangers.
Yeah.
For Peter Nedved, who was in the middle of a holdout, and then he just exploded with the Penguins. He was awesome.
Yeah. He has also had an incredible talent for driving coaches crazy, which I'm pretty sure he did in every stop, everywhere, including Pittsburgh and Montreal and the Rangers and wherever else he went.
I think that's why the Rangers got rid of him. He was a rookie star on their cup-winning team, and you'd think that would make you like a Ranger for life, and you know, they just kind of ran him out of town.
No, as well, the Rangers.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. Yeah.
For Peter Nedved, who ran himself out of town.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was great. But yeah, that was just a great trade.
Man, I think my favorite Penguin from that, because I obviously despise so many of them. From the especially from the Crosby era. I was born in '90, so like I caught the tail end of Lemieux but right into Crosby, and he's just tortured me since. But not including former Islander Penguins like, you know, Andy Hilbert or Palffy or anyone of that. Like I always just loved hearing the name Tomas Sarovi. In that year, and those teams were so bad, so he was like one of the better players on the team, and he would I feel like he was just always digging pucks out of the corner, and I was like, I like that guy, and always loved the goaltenders that you had in that era too. Like you'd just be Andy Chiodo and Sebastian Caron and Danny Saber, and like those guys were terrible.
Chiodo's their goaltending coach now.
Oh man.
Former Sidney Crosby winger Andy Hilbert.
Yeah, that's our guy. That's our guy.
That is Islanders legend.
Guy.
Yeah.
My personal favorite Penguin of all time, as Mike said, I hate most of them too, but it is impossible to hate Ron Francis, a guy who is one of the best players in the history of not one, but three franchises. If you count the Whalers and Hurricanes separately, you're like, Ron Francis, that dude was really, really good. Like it was kind of crazy how good he was.
It's a very funny curio in Penguins history too, that Ed Johnston, who was the Penguins general manager in the 80s, who drafted Mario Lemieux, he left to become the general manager of Hartford. And he famously traded Ron Francis to the Penguins for John Cullen. It was, you know, John Cullen and Zarley Zalapsky for Ron Francis and Grant Jennings and Ulf Samuelsson, of course. It was great.
Right.
And then he left Hartford and came back to the Penguins and worked for them for the rest of the 90s. It's like a double agent move.
Sleeper agent, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, whoops, I traded a Hall of Famer to the team. They won 2 cups, and I'm going right back to that team. Yeah, it's like, thanks, dude.
Somebody needs to write a book about sleeper agents because the Islanders, not to go off on a whole tangent here, but Don Maloney was the Islanders general manager in the early 90s, and after a 12-year career playing for the Rangers. And so people were like, wait, this guy plays for the Rangers all this time and the playoffs and all that stuff, and now he's the Islanders general manager? Trades Pierre Turgeon to the Canadians and thinks that they can build the team around Kirk Muller. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. And then he leaves, and then he ends up I think it's the Rangers assistant general manager at one point. So it's like, what is happening here? Anyway,
some cushy job, like hockey consultant. Like, just thanks for ruining the other team for us. Here's some money.
Basically, Well, it was money well spent. But in any event, but the Penguins have had as you said, a long history of incredible players, some of the best players in the history of the NHL. We're going to talk about a man tonight who is not one of them, but he was, for a very, very brief time, the best player on the Penguins before the emergence of some of the other best players on the Penguins. And this guy's a fascinating player. I've wanted to talk about him for a long time. I'm so glad you can come on, and we brought on an expert for this. So, Dan Hopper, will you please reveal the subject of tonight's episode of Weird Islanders, the podcast?
The subject of tonight's episode is one-time Penguins leading scorer, Dick Tarnstrom.
Dick Tarnstrom, again, one time. When he says one time, he means literally one time. This is the only time he was the Penguins' leading scorer. Before we dive into the career of Dick Tarnstrom, reminder that we are on Patreon at patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Membership gets you ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts, written posts, and a whole lot more. Or you can just sign up for free to get our release calendar or try a 7-day trial of our country club tier for free. All right, so try that anytime, any way you can. Patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Okay, Dan. When you saw the name Dick Tarnstrom, when I reached out to you and said, hey, would you want to come on a podcast, talk about Dick Tarnstrom? What was the first thought that went through your mind? Was it, I haven't thought about Dick Tarnstrom in 25 years?
No, I mean, he comes up, the players from that early 2000s come up a lot just as like jokes. Because I know we've been very spoiled as Penguins fans in the 90s and then 2005 on. But that early 2000s team they were going bankrupt.
Yeah.
The team was completely bankrupt. They'd overspent. The ownership situation was in chaos. They were threatening to move. They were cutting their payroll to the bone. They traded everyone away. So there were these couple years of just like weird ass forgotten players who, as a fan, still with like the momentum of like, this is a contending team. Like, I'm watching every single game. You're suddenly watching all these like complete losers and being like, maybe this guy, maybe Thomas Sorovi's got something, and stuff like that. And this immediately transports me back to that era, because Dick Tarnstrom did for one season lead the Penguins in scoring as a defenseman.
Yeah, it's crazy. Mike, the way Dan just described the Penguins as, running ownership ran them bankrupt, Mike moving, all these bad players all getting traded away, all the good players getting traded away, all these bad players playing. Sounds an awful lot like the Islanders for about 10 years there, right?
Yeah. PTSD. The only difference is that the guy who was supposed to be our savior at like the end of that, he left us, so a little different. But yeah, I mean those teams. I remember it's such a foreign feeling now, because we're nearly 20 years removed from it, and the Penguins have, as we said, like the Islanders have got them back a little bit, but for so long in our life, like they just tortured the Islanders, and you just felt like they would just show up, they'd pummel us. You get all the calls, and then they'd leave Nassau County with 2 points, and I'd just be pissed off. And but there was a time, despite that I was like, this team is affable. They're lovable losers. I don't want to see the Penguins move. Like there was the bankruptcy cloud and all that, and you felt like a kinship with the fan base because of what we were going through. The Igloo was cool.
Yeah.
The Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, like there was something, like there was just something nice and warm about them, and it was probably just because like the franchises were just in a similar spot, that these teams, especially, and the Islanders would beat these teams. They'd score 6 on Jocelyn Thibault or something, and that'd be great. But these teams were great, and then it just, all the breaks started to come up yellow and black, and that kind of changed everything.
Yeah, I mean the Tarnstrom era led to that. Really, they kind of bottomed out, not really as like a tanking strategy long-term goal. It was like pure necessity that they could not make payroll, and they were literally trading Yanni Laukkanen and Dan Lacouture to the Rangers because they made like $1 million. Like that's how bad it was. And then they finished, I think they had the 3rd pick, ended up with Fleury. Then they finished dead last the year Ovechkin was number 1, didn't win the lottery, so they got bumped to 2, which ended up being Malkin. And then the next year there was the lockout, and then they did that special Crosby draft.
Yeah.
Right.
So they ended up getting Crosby that way. And so it was like they kind of lost the lottery ball on Ovechkin, but ended up getting Crosby, or getting Malkin. And then like the formula they used to do the Crosby draft, because they hadn't won the lottery in X years, they had a maximum number of balls, and then they end up with Crosby. So like 8 things went perfectly, and not really by design of them having like a long-term Chicago style tanking plan, I don't think.
Yeah. And like you said, this comes after years of mismanagement, bankruptcy. I mean, the reason we talked about him before, but like the reason Ron Francis got, signed with the Hurricanes was because the Penguins were big into deferred payments. I think this came up with Yager too, and how we ended up getting traded to the Capitals was like they were deferring payments to guys in their contracts because they didn't have any money. So it was like, well, you sign now and then we'll just pay you, 5 years from now. And after a while, those guys were like, yeah, but I want to get paid. And so they ended up getting traded because it just didn't work. And like Mike said, at this time, obviously, listen, I went to a lot of Islanders games in the early 90s when I was in college, and late 90s when I was in college, and there's a student discount plan. I used to watch Yager and Lemieux absolutely victimize the Islanders all up and down the ice. But there was something about that team that you didn't want to see. They were a historic team. They had a lot of battles with the Islanders in the playoffs during the dynasty. And then obviously I remember those 2 Lemieux Cup runs. So like, you didn't want to see them move. I don't want to see any team move, but I have been to the Igloo a couple of times, saw a couple of games there. I saw Ziggy Palffy's last game as an Islander there. He had a hat trick, I believe, against the Penguins. And so like, you didn't want to see them move. And you did feel a kinship with them. But at the same time, it was like, man, these guys just can't get out of their own way. And then it seemed like in the blink of an eye, they were really good again. And they have been the entire time.
Did you mention former Penguin Ziki Palffy?
I always take every chance to mention former LA King, former Islander Ziki Palffy. And actually, that's another connection too. Like, I mean, you're talking about like trading guys because they're making $1 million. The Islanders had an ownership group that wanted Mike Milbury to cut the entire payroll down to $15 million. And this was at a time when I think Mario Lemieux was making $8 million. And it's like, okay, like I get that he's Mario Lemieux, but like still he's one guy and this whole team is going to make twice as much as him with 20 guys. Come on, give me a break. Anyway, before we get into this whole era though, I think we need to address a certain juvenile elephant in the room. And that is that Dick Tarnstrom's first name is Dick. We cannot let this go. We have to examine this. This is a man who was born in 1975. He's only a year older than me. He played in the NHL in the early 2000s. This wasn't like the 1940s. There's not a lot of like Dick Duffs or Dick Irvins running around while he was playing. I mean, I think it stands to reason that he's probably the last NHL Dick, right? I can't imagine we're going to see another Dick in the NHL anytime soon, right?
And he's got to be the only Swedish one too, right?
Yeah,
that's what always kind of confused me about this. Is his name is, and on his Wikipedia, it's not Richard Dick Tarnstrom. It's Dick.
It's just Dick.
It's just Dick. It's just Dick Tarnstrom. And I was 11 and 12 when this guy was, ripping it up on the Islanders in that magical 2001-2002 season. And what I loved about Tarnstrom was he was a 2-name guy. So like Howie Rose would always say Dick Tarnstrom. And I'm like, as a 12-year-old, you're just, giggling and looking at your dad or your brothers. Like, I can't believe he just said that name. But I couldn't believe that Howie and at the time Joe Micheletti like kept it together the whole time, because they would always say like and a shot from Dick Tarnstrom, and I wonder if like they had a thing where if the other guy had to buy him dinner or something if they ever lost their cool. But it became normal. I was having this conversation with somebody about St. John's legend Bootsy Thornton from your era, Dan, and I was young when Bootsy Thornton was playing for St. John's. And so I was so young that I just kind of assumed that I would go out in the world and I would meet more people named Bootsy, because that's just what you'd think. Hey, this guy's playing for St. John's. There must be 1 million Bootsies out there in the world. Yeah. And I felt the same way about Dick Tarnstrom. I'm like, well, it can't be that weird, because there's probably a ton of guys named Dick in the NHL. If this guy's named Dick and he's Swedish, and like you said, haven't run into another one since, I don't think.
There were other Dicks, but they played during World War II.
Yeah.
Is Dick funny in Swedish?
I don't know.
No
I don't know what the translation here is. Like I'm not sure. There's no answer anywhere. But when the Penguins had him, I was reading on the Wikipedia that they also had Rick Jackman. So and the two of them played really well together, and they were dubbed the Rick and Dick Show on the power play.
Wow.
So
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people had fun with the name, and
Jack and Dick.
Jack and Dick, that's right.
Yeah, that's the alternate. That would not be good, but it's just it was very, I always remember this being, it was very strange. The same thing, like, why is his name Dick? Like, maybe it means something else in Swedish. I don't know, but it was a very strange experience. But
it's a very, very old school baseball name.
Also
Dick,
true, yeah.
Dick Grote, Dickie, Dickie Thon, Dick Allen, like that kind of stuff. But and 1989, December 31st, 1989, as soon as like the New Year's ball dropped into the 90s, it's just like, all right, there's no one named Dick in the world.
That's it. The Dicks are all gone.
Except this guy.
He was the last one. Also, speaking of people named Boots, didn't Boots Del Baggio own the Penguins for a little while? Or am I misremembering that?
I don't remember. DeBartolo owned the Penguins, and he was a criminal, right? or not criminal. Did some fraud thing because he was a 49ers owner too, I think. And
okay. I think that's the guy I'm thinking of. Yeah.
The Penguins also, the guy who ran up all these bills we're talking about was Howard Baldwin, who produced the film Sudden Death that you mentioned.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's great group of guys there. Let me tell you. Well, we go back and forth on criminal owners all night. Let me tell you. And now, a word from our sponsors. VintageIceHockey.com. Over 100 classic hockey logos on t-shirts, jerseys, hats, mugs, and more. Long Island Ducks, Albany Riverettes, Danbury Trashers, Kentucky Thoroughblades, and so many more. Plus a full line of Islanders Anxiety merch with our portion of the sales going directly to the Center for Dementia Research. These incredible items cannot be found in stores, so shop vintageicehockey.com today. Relax, sit back, and enjoy wine from The Pinot Project. Rosé, Pinot Grigio, or a Pinot Noir that was named a Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. These wines are delicious, affordable, and available at area wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com, and please drink responsibly. Dick Tarnstrom was drafted by the Islanders, like I said, born in 1975, drafted by the Islanders in the 11th round in the 1994 draft. We love it when guys are drafted in rounds that don't exist anymore.
Yeah. Not even close. They stopped at
close.
7 now, right?
Yeah. I didn't even realize there was an 11th round back then.
Wow.
Out of Sundbyberg, Sweden, which has to be the most Canadian sounding Swedish town of all time, Sundbyberg. Like, that can't be right. Plays a lot for AIK in Sweden. We're going to get back to them in a little bit, but comes over to the U.S., plays a few games for the Bridgeport Sound Tigers at the time. Again, this was in 2001, and then ends up playing for the Islanders. And this was his only season on the island. I could have swore he played more seasons than this, but he had a pretty good season, first season in the NHL. He had 62 games played, 3 assists, 3 goals, 16 assists, 19 points. But this was 2001, 2002, which, as Mike said, was a magical season, the first good season the Islanders had in forever, and on a team with Michael Pekka, Alexei Yashin, Adrian Aucoin, Jason Blake, Chris Osgood, the whole rundown. Dick Tarnstrom kind of got lost in the sauce a little bit. Mike, what do you remember about Dick Tarnstrom's one season with the Islanders? Is there anything that particular stand out to you?
Yeah, I remember like the power play that year was so good, mostly because of Adrian Aucoin and Yashin were just so good on the man advantage that year.
Parrish too was also really good on the power play.
Parrish in front of the net. Like, they had a really good formula with those guys, and then Tarnstrom would get power play 2 time, and he was pretty competent. Like, he just was good, like a solid, as you said. The numbers are. Like, if you're looking at a 27-year-old making his NHL debut season for you, like coming from Europe, and he gives you 62 games and 21 points, you take that. And so I think I also assumed he was, because it was his rookie year technically, I guess, in the NHL. Like, I thought he was younger and there was more, reasons to be like hyped about him. So I kind of got like wrapped up in that with him. I remember being like, oh, this guy's going to be a big part of what we're building here. And it turns out that wasn't the case, because he was gone pretty quickly. But a note on that 94 draft that he was selected in the 11th round. And I mean, this draft is just littered with weird Islanders, from Darren Quint, Mike Watt, Ryan Smith. It's just crazy how many guys. Evgeny Nabokov, Tim Thomas, John Graham. Like, it's just this. Everybody who was drafted and made it into the NHL from this 94 draft ended up playing a very small role on the New York Islanders. I'm quite sure of it. Eric Fichaud's draft. This is some 1994 is a beautiful draft for people like us. If you want to go through the number 9 ranked North American skater from Central Scouting that year was Jason Weimer. So you could, if just that right there tells you that this is a one of the great drafts of all time. So but in terms of his on ice impact, I remember just being kind of like pleasantly, like I just had a pleasant time watching Dick Tarnstrom, and that team was just so much fun to watch. And like guys like I feel like everybody who stepped on the ice for them did their job, whether it was Tarnstrom, whether it was like Jim Cummins comes along out of nowhere, or Radek Martinek's rookie year.
So Sean Bates kind of came out of nowhere and had one of the biggest moments in Islanders history. So.
Right, yeah. Everybody just did what they were supposed to do for that team, and Tarnstrom for sure. And he obviously got a lot of trust playing 62 games, and not the most ice time, but like he played close to 18 minutes a night. So there's a reason why his name is, I would say, there's obviously as you said, like the childish reason why Islander fans and Penguins fans and other NHL fans would love to bring up Dick Tarnstrom's name, but I think he's held in pretty high regard for this one season that he had on the island. And like you, it feels like he's someone who probably played 62 games, but those 62 games, when you calculate in nostalgic inflation, they feel like 250.
Right. Yeah. I found no video evidence of him playing for the Islanders whatsoever.
Crazy.
Plenty of games against the Islanders, but we'll get to those in a few minutes. I did find an article where he scored in a game against Florida that was a 6-6 tie. So we're talking about a very fun era here that we talk about a lot. He also played in that incredible Islanders Leafs playoff series that, he's one of the few guys who walked out of there under his own power. Had no points, but didn't really get involved in any of the dust ups and craziness of that series. And, again, this was a magical season for us. And, for all the guys that we've talked about over the years that were on this team, Tarnstrom kind of falls through the cracks, which, again, is a very Dick Tarnstrom thing. He was a solid player, helped on the power play, didn't, embarrass himself on defense. And it was just part of a really, really cool team that, brought pride back to the island. Now, while that's all happening on Long Island, in Pittsburgh, it is not a magical season. Penguins went 28, 41, and 8 that year. That is not good. And so, Dan, as a young Penguins fan watching this team, you must have been thinking, what on earth is going on with this team? And how much longer can they survive doing this? I mean, that's pretty bad. We've seen some bad seasons, but man, that's pretty bad.
I just was laughing at Mike referring to like the 62 games of Dick Tarnstrom like there was some legendary short career, like that old quote about like, only 500 people saw the Velvet Underground, but they all went out and started a band. It's like 62 games of Dick Tarnstrom, and everyone who saw him became a decent defenseman.
Yeah, all of a sudden, we're all outside hitting pucks against our garage door, being Dick. I'm Dick Tarnstrom, Mom.
I want to wear number 32. I don't know what he wore with the Islanders.
He wore 2 numbers that year, actually.
Yeah.
He wore 47 and 8, I believe, right?
Yes.
So 47 is such a training camp number.
I remember him as 47. Like that's if you're throwing 47s out there for the Islanders, like I'm like, Dick Tarnstrom.
47 is one with like the nameplate, not like the letters sewn on.
Yeah,
they're like, this guy's not going to stay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the early 2000s, the Penguins, they had obviously great success in the early 90s. Then the late 90s, they kind of had this brief period of decent success with Kevin Constantine. They kind of became real defensive in like the clutch and grab era. And then Lemieux came out of retirement, and they had this magical season where they had Lemieux and Jagr on one line, and then it was Marty Straka, Alexei Kovalev, and Robert Lang on the second line. And it was a really good team. Lemieux in his late 30s, still over a point a game, which, I mean, look up his numbers from his comeback year. They're ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that year, they surprisingly, they beat the Sabres in the second round of the playoffs in overtime of Game 7. Darius Kasparaitis scored on Dominik Hasek to send them to the next round. Former Islander Darius Kasparaitis. And then they ended up getting smoked by the, clutch and grab era Devils in the Eastern Conference Finals. But still, it was like out of nowhere, Lemieux comes back. Lemieux plays with Jagr. It's the old and the new. And their second line's even better than their top line. Like it was like the highest scoring line in the league, and it was their second line. And then they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals, and you're like, yes, here we go. And then they, traded Jagr, which you mentioned, because they couldn't afford him.
Right.
They kind of also, this is pre-internet, but in whatever way they could, they really kind of dumped on his character too. Yeah. Like I remember a lot of my friends at the time were like ready to get rid of Jagr, and you're like, what? Like, I mean, I guess he was like probably gambling a lot or something, but like there were a lot of like insinuations in town about like, oh, they'll be better off without him. Spoiler alert, they weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then that next year they kind of had like a Lemieux and whoever, and then kind of the leftover dregs of like, they still had like Kovalev, Straka, and Lang. I think Straka got hurt. And then they just started like trading guys for nothing to save money. And it was just kind of like old Lemieux and a bunch of like waiver caliber players, and that
Right.
was the team for a couple of years. And it was pretty sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. It was, again, the Penguins seem like a team of like kind of extreme highs and then extreme lows, right? So like 1 minute it's Lemieux, Yager, and these great guys. I remember they also went to the conference finals against the Panthers, I think, 1 year, or maybe they were in the second round.
That was 96, but that
okay.
that was Lemieux wasn't. Oh yeah, Lemieux that was before he retired the first time.
The first time.
Yeah. That pissed me off because they lose in 7 to the, again, clutch and grab Panthers, that like shitty team with they had John Van Beesbrook, and they would just grab you, and every game was 1-0, and then they got smoked by the Avalanche. But that pissed me off because that summer I went to a hockey camp, and there were all these kids from Miami randomly, and they were just all talking shit on the Penguins. I was just like, what are the odds of this? Like, like all these hockey players from Miami that year until 2 years ago is the only year in history the Florida Panthers could talk shit on anyone.
Yeah, right.
Like, and that really pissed me off.
3 years ago, you guys didn't even have a team. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you're going to suck for the next 26 years. Right. I'll tell you that now, but I didn't at the time, whatever.
Wow, that's really random. Oh, I feel bad. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah. That was that Stars hockey camp in Guelph, Ontario. I don't know if that was like a big thing in the late 90s where you got to meet NHL players, and one of them was Adam Graves.
Oh, wow.
Who was famous in Pittsburgh for deliberately breaking Mario Lemieux's arm in the 92 playoffs. He's like the most hated single person in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
Met him, of course, he's extremely nice. I was just like,
I was going to say, Adam Graves is I've said it before, he's the one Ranger that I respect greatly. He's like the nicest guy. There isn't a charity in New York City that Adam Graves has not attended an event for, which is really kind of impressive. But that's really wild. We had a friend of ours on an episode last year who he was at a summer camp on Long Island, and they had all these like big time stars were there, and he was super excited to meet Tom Chorsky, who was the only Islander who was there. So it's like all these kids were excited for these other guys, and I was there to see Tom Chorsky. So this is a very strange time in Penguins history. Again, you're coming out of the Mario era. Yager, I guess, has been traded at this point, or at least would be traded at this point. It's a bunch of cast-offs and weirdos. And again, this is kind of a weird thing because the Penguins have had this star-laden team for so long. And so on August 6th of 2002, they make the decision to pick up Dick Tarnstrom off waivers from the Islanders. First of all, who picks up somebody off waivers in the NHL in August? I didn't even know you could do that. But again, they used to have an 11-round draft. Yeah.
Why did he get waived? If
I have
he had
no idea.
Like a regular decent season.
Yeah.
And was not old or expensive. That was weird.
Yeah, it is weird. I was trying to like piece that together. And from what I can remember, and first of all, as you said, there's no internet back then. There's no Twitter. You're not, not Yanni Niema. Dick Tarnstrom getting waived by the Islanders isn't all of a sudden the subject matter of 4 different podcasts and like a content cycle. But from what I remember is that they had O'Coin and Hammerlick and Janssen coming back, and they had they had a couple like youngish defensemen that they liked back then, and like Ray Schultz and guys like that I think they liked more, and Martinek had established himself. So I think it was just like a numbers game, and they went with the likes of those guys, and Tommy Pettinen and Sven Butenschaen over Dick Tarnstrom, and I don't think it was the right decision, and it's probably the reason was that the Islanders general manager at the time was Mike Milbury, and he probably just was like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to have a cup of coffee, and I'm just going to throw a random guy on waivers and see what happens, and that was Dick Tarnstrom. Yeah, he's probably like, I can't deal with this guy's name anymore. I'm just going to throw him on waivers.
He was unfortunately Swedish, which is probably a good enough reason why he was probably put on waivers. But yeah, I think Milbury is probably as good an answer as we're going to get at that point.
I forget, are they enigmatic, or is it the? It's close. It's over there. I better be safe and waive him.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe not enigmatic, but not non-enigmatic. We'll just get rid of it.
We need to start the rumor now. Like whenever a player gets weirdly traded or waived, we have to start a rumor that he slept with someone's wife or mom
yeah,
or something,
exactly.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
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 That's all that happened back then. Was just like, oh man, Dick Tarnstrom got waived. He's definitely sleeping around with somebody, right? Like, there's no other answer. That's the answer to everything in the in the early aughts. So
The
God.
90s, the early 2000s were a weird time in the NHL. Yes, that could definitely happen. But so in any event, the Islanders lost, and we'll get to that, the effect it had on the Islanders in a little bit. The Islanders lost was the Penguins gain. And I listen, nobody thought that this guy was going to do what he did with the Penguins when the season started, but so the first season he had with the Penguins was, again, pretty good. 7 goals, 34 assists, 41 points. That's a good season. He didn't really, it's not really a breakout season, but it's like, wow, this guy came off of waivers. We got him for free and he's played pretty solid. That's awesome. Before we get to the big breakout season, you said you remembered him pretty well. So like, do you remember, I mean, I'm sure you don't remember this season specifically, but like, do you have kind of memories of this sort of early version of Dick Tarnstrom before he took over the Penguins in the next season?
I just remember I'd never heard of him, and he was scratched. He was scratched for the first game.
Okay.
And then I think his second game, he came in and he had a goal and an assist, or a goal and 2 assists or something, and played like with Lemieux for a little bit. And then it was like, oh, goal and 2 assists. This guy's immediately like our second best defenseman. And he stayed in the lineup for like pretty much the rest of the year. So that was that.
Yeah. Anytime your team picks up a dude off waivers and he puts in a solid season, that's great. I mean, Islanders fans years later would have like the Michael Grabner season where he gets picked off waivers from Florida. And the next thing you know, he's a Calder Trophy finalist. Like that, this stuff happens every once in a while. It happens to a lot of bad teams because they're the guys picking people up off of waivers. So that's pretty cool. But it is the next year, which is 2003, 2004, in which we get the full Dick Tarnstrom experience here. And this is the legendary season.
Full Dick comes out.
Dick. Yeah, right. This is the season we've been talking about this whole time. 80 games played, 16 goals, which for a defenseman is still a lot, 36 assists, 52 points. That is good enough to lead the entire Penguins team in scoring that year. And I just remember being like, not that, oh man, I can't believe the Islanders let this guy get away, but more being like, man, how bad are the Penguins that Dick Tarnstrom is leading them in scoring? That's pretty wild. I mean, listen, 52 points is not really a high number. So like, nobody really should be leading a team with 52 points. I think we talked in the Mike Comrie episode we did, or somebody like that. It was like he led the Islanders with 48 points one year. So again, it happens. But like this is where legends are made. And Dick Tarnstrom at this point became, I can imagine, a legend amongst Penguins fans for just being like, holy shit, where the hell did this guy come from?
Yeah, like you said, it is kind of a double-edged sword where it's like, wow, we got this guy for nothing, and he's like a legitimately productive NHL defenseman who's not that expensive. Like, cool, this is great. Unfortunately, he is our best player.
Yeah.
That's a problem too. Not Dick Tarnstrom's problem. That's literally every guy on the team but Dick Tarnstrom's problem. But it is the reality.
I mean, the Islanders had a season like this with Mark Streit, right? When Mark Streit led them in scoring, I think with 48 points or something like that.
That was one. Yeah, but he signed a huge free agent contract.
Right, yeah. Exactly. But the point is, like, it's not, it's not Mark. Don't be mad that Mark Streit's leading the team. At Mark Streit for leading the team in scoring. Just be mad that the Islanders are at a place where Mark Streit is leading the Islanders in scoring right now. It's not fun to be. But it is more fun when you got a name like Dick Tarnstrom to say. And you jotted it in the notes, Dan, and I'm happy you did, because he was getting some Hart Trophy consideration from a writer at ESPN.com. In the early going of that season, and the title of the article from ESPN and the link is so good. I hope you put it in there because it's like that the early 2000s aesthetic, and it says the title is Tarnstrom's Void Bigger Than Expected, which is a little upsetting that he didn't just use his first name, but to have a little bit more fun. But the first line is, there is an MVP candidate in Pittsburgh, a player such heart and soul, heart spelled Hart with capital H, that he made Penguins fans forget about all the talent their favorite bankrupt organization had to flush recently. So
I mean, I guess it's tongue in cheek. I hope.
Yeah,
I
right?
Okay.
I don't really know because this article it gets
It has to
ah,
be. Yeah.
it's
If it's written straight, then that's
it's
an insane paragraph.
Yeah.
it is an insane paragraph, and the last paragraph is incredible too because it's he talks about Tarnstrom's a lot. This is by Rob Parent at ESPN special at ESPN.com back then, and at the end of the article he's talking about Tarnstrom and the journey and how he's plucked off waivers. And we get to the end. It says, as for the local race, the Penguins have sunk to 4th in the Atlantic, ahead of, well, Nassau County's hockey heroes. But the Islanders deserve it. After all, they didn't know Dick Tarnstrom like Penguin fans do now. Okay.
Man.
Yeah.
I mean,
All right.
come on. You gotta go there?
Yeah, what a stinger.
Also,
God.
the Penguins were drawing like 11,000 fans a game that
Yeah.
year. Like, I know we have a good fan base, but like, it's not when they were bad. They were bad. You could get student rush tickets for $20 and sit in the A section, and justifiably. Like, why would you pay Stanley Cup team prices that they still were to watch the Dick Tarnstrom led Penguins?
Yeah. Listen, no team when they're that bad is gonna draw a ton of people, but yeah, I mean, I guess this was, like you said, he was their best player. I think calling him a Hart Trophy candidate was probably a little bit much. Mike, you skipped over my favorite passage in this story, which is that, yes, Dick Tarnstrom, the 27-year-old defenseman who is becoming the biggest blue line force in Pittsburgh since Paul Coffey. Now listen, Dick Tarnstrom had a great season for the Penguins, no doubt about it, absolutely, and he deserved, like we said, he deserved all the credit he got for taking the opportunity and running with it. But I think comparing him to Paul Coffey is probably a little bit much like calling him a Hart Trophy candidate. Dan, I don't know if you saw Paul Coffey play in how much you remember him playing in his heyday with the Penguins and the Cup teams. So, I mean, would you compare Dick Tarnstrom to Paul Coffey and say they were similar players?
Of course not. No, Paul Coffey's one of the best players of all time, one of the best skaters of all time. And to quibble with his since Paul Coffey, they actually traded Paul Coffey before they won the 92 Cup.
That's
so they
right.
won a cup without him. And, they still had Larry Murphy and Ulf Samuelsson, defensemen who are, better than Dick Tarnstrom. And then they also, in the mid-90s, had Sergei Zubov, who was better than Dick Tarnstrom. So, I would take a slight issue with that. He did finish. I'm looking at his hockey reference page. He was 17th in Norris voting that year.
Look out.
That's unbelievable. I can't believe they found 17 people better than Dick Tarnstrom. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Ever feel like your brain just won't click? Onnit Alpha Brain is a daily supplement engineered to support memory, focus, and mental speed. Made with science-backed ingredients, Onnit Alpha Brain helps you lock in, tune out distractions, and stay sharp. See what your brain can really do. Visit onnit.com and shop Alpha Brain to unlock your next level. That's ONNIT.com.
So it wouldn't be a Penguins-centric episode without some goal calls from the great Mike Lang. And like I said before, finding Dick Tarnstrom videos of him playing for the Islanders proved apparently difficult. But I did find a bunch of videos of him playing for the Penguins. One is one of my favorite sort of internet relics from the relics of the early internet era. And that is the goal compilation set to like butt rock. So there's one of those. Not great for a podcast, but I'll do the link to it. But there's a couple here. And again, he's a really good player. He's good at like kind of getting down low in the zone and skating around and finding holes there. And, obviously when you're playing on a line with Mario Lemieux or playing on a power play with Mario Lemieux, the puck can find you. And so he had a really good knack for that. And, there's a couple of goals here, again, accompanied by the great Mike Lang, the late great Mike Lang.
A little attention to the guys. Sure, why not? Yeah, they earn it. Work their tails off all year long. Here's Tarnstrom with a backhand reach, scores! Dick Tarnstrom ties the game with 5:15 left in the third. And the Penguins are even at 3. And you can buy Sam a drink and get his dog one, too.
You can see why this guy was, the best player on the team, probably one of the most exciting players on the team. Lemieux would not be around that long. And as you said, Dan, they would be very bad. They would end up with Marc-Andre Fleury, Gary Malkin, eventually Sidney Crosby, and like it took those guys time to get to where they were. They didn't just pop out of the gate being as Hall of Famers, but like in this era, I mean, I don't know if you can kind of sum up what it's like. This is a team that has fought out of bankruptcy, had to have their number one center buy the club to save them. I remember they at some point, I don't know if it was around this time, but they did obviously get the new arena that was paid for with some sort of like casino money. There was a lot of relocation rumors and like,
that was later.
That was later. Okay. Yeah. So, but like, this is a very weird, fraught time for this team.
Mm-hmm.
And through it all is a Swedish guy who got picked up on waivers who ends up being really, really good. Like, is this, I mean, looking back, I mean, you watch the Penguins win cups with Lemieux, you've watched them win cups with Crosby. This era seems to have kind of been a little bit forgotten, but like amongst fans like yourself, is there nostalgia for this and is as fraught and as weird as it was?
Yeah, I think so. I think in two ways. One, like I said, you could get they had a student rush plan where any available seats 2 hours before the game or whatever, or an hour before the game, you could get for $20, and you could get A and B section seats. And a lot of people who were, teenagers, college students, got tickets and watched them at a time when, you could never get Steeler season tickets because Steeler tickets are like handed down, bequeathed from generation to generation. But now all of a sudden, like kids could go in and watch a Penguin game cheaply. And I really do think that made a generation of Penguins fans, like in a way that like, kids, obviously everyone likes the Steelers in Pittsburgh, but like people weren't all going to the games in the same way they were these early 2000s Penguins. So then when they got good, they had all these fans that were ready to go. So it really worked. And then the other way I think is just like a funny reference. Like every single guy on this team is like a funny reference. A year or two after this, I think it was 03-04, their marketing campaign was they were the X generation, which is like the next generation, but because it's the early 2000s, it's like X because it's like extreme or whatever. And so you can find like, this like very like Woodstock 99, like X generation. And it's all the players from that era, but they're all just, terrible.
Under this dome, a new generation of heroes will be born. Forged in ice, destined to dominate. Mario returns to lead a new generation of Penguins. Introducing the X generation. This year, the ice will burn.
So it's this intense like animation, but it's like Konstantin Koltsov and Rico Fata and Milan Kraft and whatever. And it's pretty funny to watch.
Yeah, you took Milan Kraft right out of my mouth because I was looking at the roster. I'm like, oh, dude, I remember Milan Kraft. Also, it has to be mentioned, Mike, that Islanders legend John Sim is on this team, and almost Islanders general manager Mark Bergevin also on this team. He was 38 years old at the time.
He was best friends with Lemieux.
I was going to say, right, Lemieux. So, it is funny how teams like this can make fans. And like, Mike, you're one of those fans. We talk about that, again, the 2001-2002 Islanders team being sort of like the one that formed your fandom. But like the 2 years before, where they were absolutely dreadful, were like, for lack of a better word, the Mariusz Tchaikovsky era, Brad Isbister era, whatever you want to call it, like that also made a lot of fans. Because I remember going to those games for $15, like with a student ID, and my buddy Gio and I would sit in the 300s, and then after a period, some usher would be like, "You can come down," and he would wave you down, and you'd get better seats.
Please come down.
Please come down. When the games were always against other bad teams, it was always Hartford or Tampa Bay or Ottawa or whatever. But like those players like formed your fandom basically, as awful as they were.
Yeah. It felt like almost like you just appreciated them for showing up. You're like, well, I gotta go, so you gotta go too, Mike Watt or whoever, right? Like it's it's fun to hear from a fan of and another fan base talk about something like that, because it's even after the Islanders quote unquote got good, and by good I mean got the 8th seed a couple times in the
first round.
And like the post 04-05 lockout years, I would just show up to games and walk into the box office and be like, I'll either use my student discount to get a ticket for $10 in the in the Havoc Energy Zone students seating, or oftentimes I would just walk into the box office and there'd be some guy in like a trench coat or something, be like, hey, you need tickets? Like, I've got like 10 extras. And I'd be like, okay. And they would just literally give the tickets to me. And then you just would go down to the whatever seat you wanted to sit in, and nobody would bother you. That you'd get to know the ushers, and the Islander brass was like, well, as long as it looks like the building's more full than the 6,000 people that are here. And I remember being in Nassau Coliseum in situations like that against these particular Penguins, and being excited to be there, because I'm like, we're gonna win this game, because this team is pretty hopeless. Watching, the husk of Steve Webb skate around, or John Sim or whoever, and John Sebastian Alban's in goal, and it's our chance. I mean, I did think that Ramsey Abid, I remember him being like, oh, he's gonna make it. This guy's gonna be some special player, but. And Rico Fata could skate. I remember that about him. Rico Fata that year, by the way, minus 46. The Penguins' leading scorer that year, Dick Tarnstrom, was second on the team at minus 37, and then a man that we all hate, Brooks Orpik. I shouldn't say we all. Dan and I hate. Yes. At minus 36 at third place on that team. So Rico Fata with a minus 46 is pretty impressive, especially scoring 16 goals.
Another indicator of how bad that era was, the guy, John Barbaro, who was like the Penguins public address announcer who would announce the goals and stuff for years. He always had one or two guys on the team that had like a special announcement. He would be like, goal scored by number 66, Mario Lemieux, and everyone would like say it along with him, or it was like Jaromir Jagr, and everyone would say that along with him. And in this era, he really was trying to do goal scored by Rico Fata, and you're like, oh my god, Rico Fata is our special announcement guy. This team is we're hopeless.
Oh god,
that's really funny. Rico was better than Drew Fata, though, who will probably get an episode of this show at some point as a Weird Islander. Also, we need to point out Ryan Malone, a man we've talked about before in this show, who every time he played the Islanders turned into Jaromir Jagr. It was really embarrassing. This guy was a totally mediocre player in everywhere he went, except when he played the Islanders. I don't know if they owed him money or he just hated them. Maybe he was a Rangers fan growing up. I don't know, but something about him just really. Something about the Islanders ticked this guy off, and he
was an okay goal scorer. He's like a 20 goal guy a couple times, and I went to his dad's hockey camp in Pittsburgh. Actually,
oh wow,
great. How dare you insult him, my best friend?
Pittsburgh.
I went to his dad's hockey camp 600 years ago.
Oh my god, I'm sorry. Well, tell him I still hate him.
We text every day.
I think I told this story once before, but I was eating with my friend in New York City, and I could have swore the guy sitting at the table next to us was Sean Avery. And I was like, what am I supposed to do here? Because I don't want to say to him, hey, are you Sean Avery? Because then the next question is, I hate you. I don't know what I'm supposed to say to you. I hate this guy. Hey, cool. Nice to meet you. I fucking hate your guts. That's bad. But anyway.
I had a thing, not quite the same, but I lived in LA for 5 years, and you do see celebrities around all the time, but a lot of times it's medium level celebrities. Right. And so you just walk past Jesse Tyler Ferguson from that Modern Family. And you're just you recognize them, but you don't want to be like, oh my God, I'm a huge fan. You're just that is that guy.
Yeah.
All right. All right, cool.
To the point. That's cool.
He knows him. Yeah. It's like this funny, I don't love you, I don't hate you, but I do recognize you.
I do know you. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, famous person. Yeah.
That's very funny. Well, if you see Ryan Malone's dad, tell him I said hello. I'm sure he's So as Mike said, I was gonna say, it wasn't all perfect for Dick Tarnstrom that year. He was a minus 37. This team finished 23, 47, and 8 for only 58 points, fifth in the division. Coach Eddie Olczyk, by the way, running that team, and of course he would eventually be let go, and
Michel Therrien, right?
Michel Therrien, thank you, would take over, or they go to Cup final and lose. Dan Bilesman comes in, they go to Cup final and win. So it's not really that far removed from the Penguins' next glory period, which of course we all know very well. But the problem was that Tarnstrom wouldn't be around to see that era, because on January 26th, 2006, he is traded to Edmonton for two players. This is a man who was picked up on waivers 4 years earlier, and now he's being traded for two guys, two NHL guys too. Corey Cross, who was in the league forever, and Yanni Rita. But that was it for Dick Tarnstrom and the Penguins. Dan, do you have any memories of this monumental trade in Penguins history. We'll get to his Oilers tenure in a second, but do you remember, hearing about this trade or having any reaction to it?
I remember Yanni Rita as one of a million generic forwards from this era that you just hoped had something,
right?
And did not. I don't really remember Corey Cross's Penguins tenure at all, but it's just weird. And I think this happens with teams like the post-Cup Ken Holland to an extent, but like Craig Patrick, the Penguins general manager, just was on such a hot streak in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like, trading for Paul Coffey, trading for Ron Francis, and even later got Kovalev out of nowhere, got Robert Lang out of nowhere, Yuri Slager, that you just like implicitly trusted him. And so you're like, well, he must see something in Yanni Rita or whatever. And only in retrospect, you're like, oh, this guy didn't know shit for like 10 years. Like they didn't have like a proper scouting department. They didn't have I don't think they had the internet until like post lockout or something. It's like not a joke. There's like an old like Ryan Whitney quote about like after they replaced Craig Patrick and they started getting players like catered meals on flights. So they could get like vegetables and pasta and stuff. And before that, they used to get like hot dogs and chicken fingers and like whatever was like on like the flight itself, like stuff like that. It was just, they were just this zombie franchise for like 7 or 8 years. And in retrospect, it's like very obvious.
The teams, and we hear about this with the Islanders all the time, guys having to pay for their own sticks and stuff. And we've heard Ziggy Palffy, I know, had complained a lot about, the treatment, but it's rough when your team is bankrupt. And for a long time, I've said this before, I was like a Milbury apologist for a long time because the team had no ownership. They had no money. Like, what's he going to do? But what got me out of that mode of thinking was the Buffalo Sabres had no money either, and were also bankrupt, and they kept going to the Eastern Conference Finals. So whatever Darcy Regier was doing up in Buffalo, Mike Milbury should have learned how to do.
Having Dominic Hasek?
Yeah, well, that also helps. Yeah, but it just seemed like they were able to find some guys to come in and score, and the Islanders never had those guys. But it's rough. So I'm sure there was some sort of financial reason why he was traded or whatnot, but he goes to the Oilers and he was
slept with someone's wife again.
Yeah, or he slept with somebody's wife, one or the other.
God, no, not again. Yeah,
that guy's a menace. I don't know. It's like a gigolo. What's going on? But so he wasn't an Oiler for very long. He was there for the run to the Cup final in 2006 and actually played a bunch of games for them in that final. I have no memories of this whatsoever. I watched that final. This is obviously the first one after the lockout. I have no memories of this man being on this team at all. And
me neither.
Yeah, finding an article about it. This is from the Edmonton Journal. The writer was like, he made marginally fewer defensive errors than players such as Yanni Pitkinen, Yaroslav Smid, and Denis Grabeshkov, who was also from the Islanders. And that he didn't seem to accomplish much on offense. The power play stalled when he was out there. He made strong passes to get the puck out of his own zone, however, and was a steadying influence there. So didn't seem like whatever magic he had in Pittsburgh took the flight with him to Edmonton, although, again, the team was obviously much better. Mike, you've talked about this team a lot. We joke that this team is the closest the Islanders have made it to the Stanley Cup final in years because there are so many Islanders connections on it. Michael Pekka, all these other guys on that team. But did you remember Dick Tarnstrom being on this team?
I do. And the reason I do is because being like, this guy could still like almost pulling for the team because Pekko's on it and there's a couple other guys, but being like this guy at this time was only 4 years removed from the Islanders and being like, I would love to see Dick Tarnstrom get his name on the Stanley Cup after those 62 games with the Islanders that left such a huge impact. So I don't remember like him anything about his time with this Stanley Cup run or runner up run. But I do know he was there. I think they had a lot higher expectations than they got. Like they thought this guy was going to be a really good kind of deputy to Marc-Andre Bergeron on the power play. And it just didn't work out because that defense was really funny to look at now because Pronger, of course, is like the headliner, but then you got like Steve Stais and Jason Smith, who are basically the same type of person. They just want to cross-check you in the teeth and they can't really skate. Yaro Spacek. And then, rotation with like Matt Green, who's not too far off of those other two guys. And this is a defense that if you took them from their age during the Stanley Cup run and then planted them in the modern NHL, they would just be left out of town. It's because nobody could skate, and they're all just like kind of big lumbering guys, and it worked. And then there was Tarnstrom, who was kind of just a number 6-7 in and out of the lineup, and I was glued to the Stanley Cup final because it was so riveting. It was so like the Oilers were down to their third goalie because Marc-Andre Bergeron ran into their Rolison, who was playing out of his mind. They were the 8th seed. They all had these, like, of course the Islanders created the playoff beard, but these guys had the best playoff beards you've ever seen. Like, guys like Pisani, Pekka, like Ethan Morrow. These were some serious playoff beards, and so it was just a lovable team, and that's why I do remember Tarnstrom there, and I'm happy he got a run. Like he put in some shifts on some terrible Penguins teams, and ends up getting rewarded for it a little bit with the going down. I'm sure Oilers fans remember him and are like, well, he was part of this team, which was really special to them.
Yeah, that run with the Oilers and the 5 games with the Islanders in the playoffs and that series against the Leafs we talked about almost an hour ago, those are the only 2 playoff appearances Dick Tarnstrom made because the Penguins weren't that good, and he was there, even though he was their leading scorer, he didn't help much. They were still pretty bad. And then that was it. He would be traded the next year out of Edmonton to Columbus. He would play 19 games for the Blue Jackets. Actually, I should mention he got traded to Columbus for forward Curtis Glencross, one of my favorite names in the last 25 years in the NHL. Curtis Glencross, who would find his footing in the NHL with the Oilers' bitter provincial rivals, the Calgary Flames. So somehow he ended up, that's how I guess he first got transported to Alberta via Dick Tarnstrom, and then would torture the Oilers for years to come. But and then that was it. He, after that time with Columbus, he would move back to Sweden, his original club, as I mentioned before, AIK, based in Stockholm. The team, talk about a team that was in trouble. I mean, this would have happened to the Islanders and Penguins, no doubt, in these eras. It got relegated. They do the relegation system there. They were down to like the 3rd tier, I guess, over the last few years. Tarnstrom gets there, is named captain, and before you know it, they're back in the top tier, and they go on these like long playoff runs. I think they went to a final or something. So, he after reviving, or I should say, keeping the Penguins afloat for a couple of years there in the 2000s, he just goes back home and he just completely revives his old club and brings them, promotes them almost single-handedly back to, I say single-handedly, I guess if I watch these games, but like he helps promote them back to the Premier League out there. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like I was like, again, I make the joke all the time that like if we had relegation here, the Islanders would have been playing in the ECHL for the last 25 years. Like there's no way they would be an NHL team at this point. So thank God they don't. But this seemed like also a very Dick Tarnstrom way to kind of almost close this up, was like, well, of course he went there and helped get them back to the Premier League, because we saw him kind of do that, be a one-man show with the Penguins all those years. So a couple of years.
Fellow Swedes, yeah. I will tell you the lessons I have learned from Rico Fata. It will make us winners. And it worked.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. But yeah, so yeah, that was about it. So then he retired. He was forced to retire in 2013 due to a herniated spinal disc, which I hear you, and it sucks. And now he's currently the youth hockey manager for, and I'm going to completely butcher this, but I'm going to try anyway, Malarhoden Bredang Hockey, or MB Hockey. Let's just go with that. And his son, Oliver, was drafted into the NHL in 2020 by the New York Rangers, which sucks. But he didn't sign with them and is currently playing in Sweden. So there is a chance.
There's hope.
There is hope that one of Dick Tarnstrom's ancestral homes could bring his son back and bring back the glory and maybe finish the job that his dad started. So, Dan, if you had to sum up the Penguins' Dick Tarnstrom experience, what would you say was, again, a very weird time for your club? Their glory would be very shortly, would come very short after that. But you said yourself, this is where fans are made, and there's people out there like yourself keeping the torch of Dick Tarnstrom alive. But like, if you had to sum up this era in a few words, what would it be?
I think it's, like when you hear a song and you immediately think of like, oh my God, like high school road trip or so, like like a couple notes of a song reminds you of a specific time in your life,
Right.
like so viscerally, or like a smell or something like that. It's kind of like that. It's just like Dick Tarnstrom immediately reminds me of early 2000s Penguins, this era in between them being good and then kind of zombified and before they were good again, where it was just like, I don't know what this was.
Right.
They're full of non NHL caliber players, but you could get cheap tickets, and it was kind of lovable. And I mean, I don't know, not really lovable. The team wasn't lovable. It was like fun because like you could sit in the A section that was always so forbidden for $20. I don't think I'd ever seen a game up close. I'd been going to games for my dad's tickets were in the front of like the balcony section. And I'd gone to hockey games for 15 years or whatever and never sat close enough where you could see players' faces. And so and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm sitting where like, the Chase Bank would put their seats or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, I think to me, it's that visceral feeling of like any of these 20 names on this roster. And if you say them to any Penguins fans my age, you'll get the same reaction. Just kind of this like laughing, immediately remembering this like X generation, like, oh man, did we suck? And this team is full of obscure names, but I don't know, it's a funny nostalgic period too. And you couldn't really have your heart broken because they were never in any important games,
Yeah, that's kind of the way it was with the Islanders too. And it's funny, like when the Islanders did start getting better, it was like, oh, this is what it's like to be really invested in a game that matters.
Yeah.
Like it was almost like, part of me is like, man, it was almost a lot more fun when the games didn't matter. It was, they were going to be a lottery team anyway. But no, that's great to hear. Like we said, we try and find experts for these players and for these clubs, and you came through as I expected you to. Thrill of Defeat is an amazing podcast. I've come to really, really enjoy it. I've listened to it almost every day when I'm at work. And in case you haven't figured it out over the last hour and change, this has been an absolutely shameless audition for Mike and I to be on the show. Whenever you do the Islanders, you have my email address. You know where to find me. No rush. And it might end up being a 2-part episode because the Islanders we have a lot of baggage, but this is what we do. And again, I cannot recommend it enough for everybody to go out and listen to it today.
It's a Ken Burns style, like it's a 10-part documentary, just 2 episodes on Mike Milbury's trades alone.
Not even. But,
yeah.
But the show is great, though. It really is. And like I said, let us know whenever you're ready to talk Islanders.
Awesome. Thank you.
I hope you had a great time. I know you're under the weather, so I want to get you out of here as soon as possible.
Oh,
I hope you had a good time.
I could talk about bad Penguin seasons for forever. Honestly, like every one of these names, it's just making me laugh. Rick Jackman. You mentioned Ramsey Abid.
Yeah.
They traded Jan Hrdina for him, and I remember, like, again, you're like, I think he's got something, man. And he's just bad and hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Matt Murley.
Matt Murley.
Who the hell are these guys?
Let everybody know where they can find the podcast. I mean, it's basically out everywhere, but are there specific places where they can find?
Mostly it's on Apple. Just search "Thrill of Defeat" or Spotify. Also, "Thrill of Defeat." Check it out for sure.
Definitely check it out.
Go ahead and pick and choose what teams you want to listen to. I kind of like all the episodes, but whatever sport you're into, go for it.
Yeah, there's teams there you would not expect there to be. I started with the Leafs one because Mike and I actually feast on Leafs misery, so that was my immediate first one, and I've been hooked ever since. So definitely, I'm telling everybody, if you're listening to us right now, you need to check this podcast out because it's amazing. Reminder to become a member at patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety for commercial-free episodes, bonus podcasts, written posts, chats, or you can just sign up for free to get our release calendar. You can try a 7-day trial for free of our country clip tier as well. Our theme song is Knuckles by Bjorn Falk. Listen to more of Bjorn's music on Bandcamp and on Spotify. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day for your most up-to-date Islanders news and discussion. Islanders Anxiety podcasts are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Find us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Please leave us a review wherever you can. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well. Shop at VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Mike, what are your final thoughts on the Dick Tarnstrom era? Either Islanders, Penguins, Oilers, Sweden, whatever you got. Dick Tarnstrom is kind of a guy who's pretty much right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, he was very important to me in kind of just forming my Islander fandom as a part of that team. But his career, he didn't really dawn on me until this listening to you two and going through it myself. Like, he played for likely the two biggest circuses in the NHL at the time. And like, so he went from the Islanders where, things were getting a little bit better, but paying for your own sticks, stuff like that, Nassau Coliseum, dingy. And it goes right to the Penguins where things weren't much better. And I'm just happy he got rewarded with a special run, but he was a soldier throughout that time. And I love guys like this who kind of make it their thing. I mean, Mark Streit to some extent did it for the Islanders with that contract. Like, I'm going to be the guy who leads this miserable team through these terrible seasons, and it's just going to be who I am for a little while, and I respect that. That takes some serious gumption. So Dick Tarnstrom is a name that if you walked into UBS Arena the next time you go and you just find an Islander fan of a certain vintage and you just say the name, you're gonna get a hug, and that's an accomplishment for an NHL player.
It is, and a very worthy man to be the final Dick in NHL history. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another great guest and another weird Islander. Until then, keep the Islanders weird, and we will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.